All right, let's jump right in. When we think about industries getting totally flipped on their heads by technology, our minds usually go to music or media, maybe taxis, right? But what about the law? One of the oldest, most traditional professions on the planet. Well, it turns out, not even centuries of tradition can stop the digital wave.
And that really brings us to the big question for today. Is the legal profession somehow immune to all this disruption? For the longest time, it kind of seemed like the answer was, yeah. But as we're about to see, there's a quiet but incredibly powerful revolution already happening that's rewriting the entire rulebook.
So, how do we know all this? Well, our guide for this whole explainer is this amazing report on the state of legal innovation in the Asia-Pacific. Think of it as our map. It lays out all the key trends, the big players, and the forces that are shaking up the legal world, not just in one country, but across a huge, diverse region.
And right off the bat, the first big discovery is a real head-scratcher. It turns out that all these little changes happening in different countries, they're actually part of a much bigger, completely unplanned, and totally uncoordinated global revolution.
Yeah, the report looked at 10 different places, and the conclusion was just crystal clear. From Australia to China, Singapore to Russia, legal innovation is happening, even in places where it's just getting started. The news is out, and people are paying attention. This isn't just some trend happening in the West. No, it's everywhere.
I love this quote from the report. A remarkable, non-coordinated coincidence. It really gets to the heart of the mystery, doesn't it? I mean, how on earth are all these countries with completely different legal systems and cultures all coming up with similar new legal tech and business ideas at the same time, with nobody in charge?
Okay, so to get this, we have to be clear on what we mean by innovation, because it's not just about flashy software or AI. The report uses a much broader definition. It's about fundamentally new ways of mixing people, processes, and tech to get legal work done. And this really shows you just how big the change is. The report breaks it down along these 5 different lines. So yeah, it's about tech, for sure. But it's also about changing the actual rules, finding new ways to settle fights without going to court, creating totally new kinds of businesses, and even rethinking how we teach law from day one. So, if there's no grand plan, what's making it all happen at once? Well, the report points to a few really powerful forces that are tying it all together. Think about the huge multinational players, the legal publishers like Thomson Reuters, the giant global law firms, and especially those Big Four accounting firms. They operate everywhere, and as they do, they spread the same tech, the same ideas, and the same expectations for innovation wherever they set up shop. Now, to see how all this plays out in the real world, the report gives us this fantastic deep dive. We're going to head to Australia to see what happens when all these forces create what the authors call a hyper-competitive market.
First, let's just get a sense of the scale here. The Australian legal market is a $23 billion industry. That is huge, a massive mature market.
But here's the kicker. Even though it's massive, the market itself is barely growing. We're talking single digits. And you know what happens when the pie stops getting bigger, right? Everybody has to fight like crazy for their slice. This pressure cooker environment means innovation isn't just a nice-to-have. It's about pure survival.
And that pressure is hitting everyone across the entire legal ecosystem. It's not just the law firms. You've got clients demanding more for less, new competitors popping up out of nowhere, and even regulators and law schools just trying to keep up.
And this all boils down to one key idea: hyper-competition. It's kind of like what happened with smartphones, right? One minute there are clear leaders, the next the whole market is up for grabs. It's a situation where it's incredibly hard for the old guard, the traditional law firms, to just rest on their laurels. The competition is just too fierce, the market's changing too fast, and new players can jump in way more easily than before.
So, on this hyper-competitive battlefield, who are the new challengers storming the castle? Well, let's meet the disruptors. For the traditional law firms, it must feel like a war on all sides. They're getting squeezed by clients who want more bang for their buck, and they're being challenged by these new, agile competitors.
You can literally see this fight for survival in the data. There's a super aggressive geographic expansion. We're talking 16 major office openings in just 3 years. And at the same time, look at all this merger and acquisition activity. It's hitting a peak as firms are basically trying to buy their way into a stronger position.
But while they're all fighting each other, they're also getting hit with this two-pronged attack. First, the war for talent is getting brutal, with a record number of top lawyers jumping ship. And then, at the same time, this whole new category of competitors shows up, one that plays by a totally different set of rules.
The report calls them new law firms, and this is a really key term. Their whole business model is different. Instead of the old-school partnership, they use something called labor arbitrage. Basically, instead of hiring super expensive full-time lawyers, they build this flexible network of contract lawyers and on-demand specialists. It lets them do the work way more efficiently and for less money.
And these new law firms aren't acting alone. They're part of this whole disruptor ecosystem that includes a ton of legal tech startups building new tools. And of course, the big four accounting firms, who are jumping back into the legal game with their massive resources.
Okay, so we've just taken a really close look at Australia's crazy competitive market. Let's pull the lens back out. What does all of this mean for the future of law around the world?
What the Australian case really hammers home is that this change isn't just coming from one place. It's being pushed forward by all 8 of these groups at the same time. You have smarter clients demanding change, new competitors forcing it, tech enabling it, even the law schools and regulators are getting on board. The entire system is transforming, all at once.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question. In this global, chaotic, and super competitive revolution, a lot of old ways of doing things are breaking down. So when all the dust settles, who's going to be the biggest winner? Is it the lawyers who manage to adapt, the tech entrepreneurs building all the new tools, or is it, in the end, the clients that everyone is supposed to be serving? The final answer? Well, it's still being written.